This is Jared Horak for today's RacingDigest.com, and we're going to do a little bit something different this week. My today's Racing Digest video, we're going to do a Breeders' Cup Classic preview. Right now it's October 10th, 2019. The Breeders' Cup Classic is going to be held on Saturday, November 2nd, 2019. So we still have a few more weeks to go before the Breeders' Cup Classic, but we have all the preps have been run, and we have a decent idea of the horses that are going to be running. So let's look at some of those early Breeders' Cup probables, or at least possibilities for the race, and then see what their chances are. We're going to do this in alphabetical order. But before we do that, we're going to, again, the fast figs. We've been talking about the fast figs for today's Racing Digest, and if you're interested in that very profitable number for today's Racing Digest, head over to today'sracingdigest.com, or you can read in the description of this video. I have some information on the fast figs. It's a combination class and speed rating all rolled into one. They've been having a lot of success with the number. I've been using the fast figs in my recent videos, and they have a special going on right now, $39 for 30 days for the fast figs, unlimited downloads. So check that out at today'sracingdigest.com. But let's start now in alphabetical order with the Breeders' Cup Classic hopefuls, beginning with Code of Honor. The Code of Honor is a 3-year-old. Going to be taking on Older, but he took on Older last time in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. He was second by a nose. He was placed first through disqualification. So he ran a decent race there against Older Company, and his last two speed figures have really jumped up, and he's really gotten better the second half of the year. He's certainly been the top 3-year-old in the country for the second half of the year. Like I said, his numbers have improved in his last couple. In both of those races, in the Travers and the Jockey Club Gold Cup, both were 1.25 miles. Now he's run in 1.25 miles 3 times, with 2 wins and a second. But he's been involved in disqualifications in 2 of those races. In the Kentucky Derby, he finished 3rd. He was placed 2nd through disqualification. And then he easily won the Travers at 1.25 miles. And then last time, as I said, Jockey Club Gold Cup, he stalked the pace, second by a nose, placed first. Now, Code of Honor is certainly one that's going to be a contender in the Breeders' Cup. Is he going to be able to handle the Santa Anita racetrack? All of his best races so far, at least most of his best races, 4 of his 5 wins were either at Belmont Park or Saratoga Racecourse. Now, he did win the Fountain of Youth Stakes at Gulfstream Park over the winter, and he was 3rd in the Kentucky Derby, so he handled Churchill Downs. So he's kind of handled everything that they've thrown at him, and he's fairly fresh still. But again, the pace scenario is going to be key. There doesn't seem to be, at this point, looking at the hopefuls for the Classic, that there's going to be a ton of pace in here. He's going to have to come from off the pace, but he is a threat for sure off of his last couple and his 1.25 mile form. The next one we'll talk about is Elate. She's a mare taking on the boys for trainer Bill Mott. And Elate is one that, just looking at her record at the distance, you have to give her consideration. She's run at 1.25 miles 3 times, and she won all 3 of those races. And that's the reason that Bill Mott wants to run her in the Classic instead of the Distaff at 1 1/8 miles. And I don't blame him. The Classic is wide open this year. Elate has good tactical speed, good late pace ratings as well, so she can stalk the pace and finish up at 1.25 miles in a race that might not have a ton of pace. She could sit a good trip, and she's a contender. She's going to have to run faster than she did in her last couple, but her best career numbers were at 1.25 miles. She's more than capable of winning a race like this, but she's going to have to step it up. She did finish second by a nose in the Personal Ensign. That was behind Midnight Bisou, and then in her last start in the Spinster, she stalked, she took the lead, and Blue Prize beat her. Her late pace ratings in those races were good, but she didn't get the job done in either against females, and now she's going to have to take on a Grade 1 males, but that 3 for 3 record at 1.25 miles must be respected. Highest Power is the next one we're going to talk about for trainer John Sadler. John Sadler, he saddled Acclimate to win the Breeders' Cup Classic last year. So he's one that's won the Classic before. This one, if you look at the form, and especially the last 10 races, you'll see there's only one number that he earned that would make him a Breeders' Cup Classic contender. That was in the Pacific Classic at 1.25 miles, a Grade 1 at Del Mar, where he tracked the pace setter Quip gave way quickly, Highest Power took over, and he just pulled away, and he won by 5 lengths. He earned a strong number, and if he ran that kind of race, he would be a solid contender in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Then last time in the Awesome again, he had the pace advantage, it seemed on paper, but he stumbled at the start, wasn't able to get involved, and then he finished a well-beaten 3rd. So if he can somehow run that Pacific Classic number, he's a threat, but I am concerned that's the only time he's run fast enough to win a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. Math Wizard is the next one, and he's another 3-year-old, and he looked good in the Pennsylvania Derby last time. In the Pennsylvania Derby, not a lot of pace, He rallied strongly. He won that one by a neck. He came through with those slow fractions, and he rallied to win anyway. And the Classic might not have a fast pace this year. At least the horses so far that are pointing to the Classic, there's not a lot of front runners. So Math Wizard's going to have to rally into some slow fractions against older company for the first time. And he's a former claimer. He's worked his way up. He earned his best career number last time in the Pennsylvania Derby. But another furlong against better company. Not a lot of pace help again. He's not going to be able to probably not be able to run all of these horses down like he did last time in the Pennsylvania Derby against 3-year-olds. Now Mackenzie, possible Classic favorite Mackenzie. The key to him might be the distance because he's 0 for 2 at a mile and a quarter. Now in the Big Cap earlier this year, he did miss that one by a nose. So that was a good effort in the Big Cap against older horses. And he's a 4-year-old now. As a 3-year-old, he was solid. He was solid as a 2-year-old. So throughout his career, he's had 13 starts with 7 wins in 5 seconds. He's run 7 times at Santa Anita with 3 wins in 4 seconds. Now the Awesome Again, that was not Mike Smith's best ride. He should have probably gone right out and wired the field, or at least attempted to do that. Highest Power, as I said earlier, he's also in the pointing to the Classic. Looked like the controlling speed in the Awesome Again. Highest Power stumbled at the start. At that point, Mackenzie was the very early leader, but Mike Smith did not go on with it. What he should have done, most likely, is just gone on, taken the lead, and tried to wire the field, because he was on the heavy favorite, the best horse on paper. And when you have that scenario, you just need to go on with it. But he didn't. He took a hold of Mackenzie, let the long shots take the lead. He stalked outside. He made a run at Mongolian Groom, your pace setter that day. But then he was second best. He just couldn't catch that one because that one just was going all alone up front. Soft fractions, was able to last. The question with Mackenzie's the distance, because I don't know that a mile and a quarter is going to be his best distance. He's already proven he could be a bit vulnerable. He was in the Classic last year. He was 12th, well beaten, way back. But like I said, he did run a better race in the Big Cap at Santa Anita earlier this year. So Mackenzie's one that, depending on how they ride him, maybe he's going to be the one that goes to the front. He's going to have a new rider in the Classic. Joel Rosario is going to take over for Mike Smith. They're switching riders. They're trying to shake things up. Maybe he goes to the front if nobody else tries to go. We know he likes the track. He's more than fast enough. He's run multiple numbers good enough to win, but at a mile and a quarter he hasn't. So that's going to be the big key for him. And then value too. Like if he's not going to offer a lot of value, you probably don't want to play him. Now, we just mentioned Mongolian Groom a minute ago, winning the Awesome Again and stealing that one. And that was his first stakes win. He had been knocking on the door. He had run some decent races. He was second in the San Diego. He was third in the Pacific Classic, third in the Big Cap. So he had run some decent races, just not really threatening to win, but hitting the board at a price. And then last time he was able to control slow fractions, and he was able to run away with the Awesome Again. I don't think he's going to be able to do that this time. Mackenzie's not going to be just going to allow him to loop along, and you're going to have some other horses that could go with him as well. So everything went right for him last time. I want to see him do that again, because he wasn't that good in his other stake starts, and he's got to go another furlong as well. Now Omaha Beach is one for trainer Richard Mandella, and Mandella's won the Classic before. Will Omaha Beach be able to stretch out from 6 furlongs to a mile and a quarter? Now there's no guarantee he's going to go in the Classic, and maybe that's the least likely of the three races that he might run in. The Breeders' Cup Sprint is one race that Omaha Beach could run in. The Dirt Mile is the second one, and then the Classic's the third one. Now I've had him ranked my top 3-year-old for quite some time, and he was going to be my Kentucky Derby top pick after he won the Rebel and the Arkansas Derby, and then the track came up wet in the Kentucky Derby. He loves a wet track, but he had a breathing issue. He had to scratch from the Kentucky Derby. That breathing issue was corrected with surgery, but he missed quite a bit of time. His last start prior to the Kentucky Derby was, as I said, the Arkansas Derby on April 13th, and then he did not run again until October 5th, the Grade 1 Santa Anita Sprint Championship at 6 furlongs. So he missed a lot of time there after missing the Kentucky Derby. They were going to bring him back in the Shared Belief Stakes at Del Mar in August. He wasn't ready for that race, and then they were going to ship him to Churchill Downs for the ACAC, a Grade 3 around 1 turn, 1 mile. Wasn't ready for that one, so then Plan C was the Santa Anita Sprint Championship. And that day, Chancelot looked like the controlling speed, and he was able to get out there. Omaha Beach turning way back in distance from 1 1/8 all the way back to 6 furlongs, and he ran a big race. He was able to track the pace. It looked like Chancelot was going to wire the field, and then Chancelot's rider came off the rail in the stretch, and that was the key, because Omaha Beach under Mike Smith was saving all the ground. He was able to sneak right up inside of Chancelot in the last jump and win by a head. That was an excellent effort. He had every right not to win that race. 6 furlongs may have been too short. He hadn't run in months. He was the first start back since surgery. That was his plan C race. So a lot of things were saying that Omaha Beach would probably run well, but not catch Chancelot, but he did. He caught Chancelot, excellent effort. Now we'll see where he goes. I think the sprint might be the best choice because he's going to get pace help in that race. He's already proven now that he can win at 6 furlongs. And from a fitness standpoint, maybe that's the race they might want to go for. The dirt mile, he could get hung out in a wide post, and that would hurt his chances. And the Classic, maybe he just isn't ready to run a mile and a quarter yet. But Omaha Beach, one of the top 3-year-olds in the country, a lot of talent, and I would consider him in any Breeders' Cup race that he decides to run in. Owendale's the next one. Owendale is one that he won the Oklahoma Derby last time from post 10. Wide trip, he was able to get the job done. Now, he's run in a lot of top 3-year-old races. He was 5th in the Travers. He was down on the inside, wasn't the place to be. He was closer to the pace than he normally is that day. He won the Ohio Derby. He was 3rd in the Preakness. He won the Grade 3 Lexington Stakes. So he's one that's been one of the better 3-year-olds this year. But he is 0 for 2 at a mile and a quarter with a 3rd place finish. That 3rd place finish, it wasn't quite a mile and a quarter, a mile and 3/16 in the Preakness. So he'll try to get involved late, but maybe the pace scenario could hurt him more than anything else. But Owendale is an improving 3-year-old. Seeking the Soul is the next one, and he has disappointed in his last few starts. He qualified a win in Urin in the Stephen Foster, qualified for the Breeders' Cup Classic. That was back in June. Since then, he really hasn't done anything. Then they ship him to California for his last 2 starts. The Pacific Classic at Del Mar, he was nowhere. He was 7th, well beaten. And then last time in the Awesome again, made a little bit of a move, didn't get a lot of pace help. He was 4th, beaten 8 lengths. And then at a mile and a quarter, he's 0 for 2. So he's one that's not in the best form, not his best distance, probably better at Churchill Downs. And at this point, based on his last couple races, hard to recommend. He's going to have to run a career top if he expects to do well in the Classic. Now, Tacitus is one of the top 3-year-olds, but he's not going to run in the Breeders' Cup Classic. They entertained the Classic, but ultimately they decided that they're going to give him the rest of the year off, and he's going to come back as a 4-year-old. And he could end up being a pretty good 4-year-old. He has an outstanding pedigree. He was one of the better 3-year-olds this year. He won the Tampa Bay Derby, the Wood Memorial, and then he was 2nd, 3rd in the Kentucky Derby, and then 2nd in the Belmont, the Jim Dandy, and the Travers Stakes, and then last time 3rd in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I just think he's had a long year. He's running a lot of top races. He's put in some good efforts, and it's probably wise that they give him a break and bring him back next year. Vino Rosso, the next one we'll talk about, and he was the one that actually finished 1st in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, but they took him down. He was able to control the pace and finish 1st over Code of Honor, and then they were 4 lengths clear of Tacitus. So those two were definitely the best 2 horses in that race. Now, Vino Rosso has tactical speed that could bode well for his chances in the Classic. He did go to the front last time, but he's very comfortable stalking the pace. And another positive angle for Vino Rosso is he won the Grade 1 Gold Cup at Santa Anita on May 27th at a mile and a quarter, and he stalked the pace outside, and he won that one nicely. So he can handle the distance. He's certainly won in good form right now, and he's been pretty fresh this year too. In the Classic, you won horses that aren't over the top, that have been running all year, and they've already run their best races. Vino Rosso's only run 5 times this year, and he's had good spacing between the starts. He was in the Whitney. He was 3rd, well beaten behind Mackenzie, but I think at a mile and a quarter, Vino Rosso is possibly better than Mackenzie at that distance, and he'll probably offer some value for Todd Pletcher. So there's a lot of positives with Vino Rosso. He's a solid contender, but maybe between Code of Honor and Vino Rosso, maybe Code of Honor has a bit more upside. His numbers are going up, but Vino Rosso did run a nice race last time, and he's a Grade 1 winner in a mile and a quarter. War of Will is the next one that we'll talk about. If he goes in the Classic, he's been struggling lately. He was pretty good over the winter, and then he won the Preakness Stakes, but he didn't run well in the Louisiana Derby when he pulled a muscle. The Kentucky Derby, he had trouble on the wet track. Then he bounced back in the Preakness. But then the Belmont, the Jim Dandy, didn't really do much running. And then the Pennsylvania Derby, he was 3rd. Not a bad effort, but there wasn't much pace signed on that day. His numbers just don't match up with the top contenders. He's lost 5 of his last 6 starts. He's going to be facing older company for the first time. There's a lot against War of Will in here. but he's in speed figures, just certainly below the top contenders, but he did run a better number in the Pennsylvania Derby. Finally, Yoshida for trainer Bill Mott. Bill Mott has a late, he also has Yoshida. Yoshida's a late runner. Yoshida rallied to finish 4th in the Breeders' Cup Classic last year, but he's 0 for 2 at 1.25 miles. Seems to do his best work at Saratoga. In 2018, he won the Woodward. This year in the Whitney, he was 2nd. The Woodward, he was 3rd by a length. So he just seems to do his best work at Saratoga at 1.1 1/8. And without a lot of pace help in a race like the Classic, he could be in a bit of trouble. He's going to be at the mercy of the pace for sure. So those are the horses right now that are pointing to the Breeders' Cup Classic. So a few weeks to go. I'm sure we're going to have some horses drop out, or maybe have some other horses possibly jump into the race. Maybe some overseas runners. This could be a good year maybe for an overseas horse to be a contender because it's so wide open. The 3-year-old division was so wide open this year. The handicap division, same thing. In this 1.25 mile distance, when all these horses are going to meet, it's going to be a heck of a race, and probably a pretty good bet that we're going to have a non-favorite win the Breeders' Cup Classic this year. So that will wrap up this early look at the Breeders' Cup Classic. For today's RacingDigest.com, I'll be back next week with another stakes race from around the country.